see the sunlight, I dream of you. I live with you, I'll die with you. Baby, can't you feel my pain? I love you more and more each day, each day. Ooh, each day. You are the people in this world, you fill me up with joy, you make me wanna smile. Come on, take my hand and walk with me for a while, for a while. Ooh, for a while. Why does all this fighting come and makes my heart ache, makes my hands go numb? Hey world, have you heard the birds sing our song for love? Ooh, for love. Ooh. Just take this walk with me and see the beauty of the stars and sea. This land was set for you and me. I live with you, I'll die with you. Baby, can't you feel my pain? I love you more and more each day, each day. When I hear the birds sing, I think of you. When I feel the sunlight, I dream of you. Hey world, have you heard the birds sing our song for love, for love, for love? Ooh, for love.
The views expressed in the following show are of the host, the guest, and the callers. The content of the following show, its accuracy, authenticity, and the ramifications of the use or application of said content is the responsibility of those speaking and listening, not the broadcast medium.
All right, we are back and we are live. Feet to the fire. I'm your host, James Altheanchik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio, live. Beginning of July, a couple days before July 4th in the United States of America, the Independence Day. And there's a lot of rumor going around that it's going to be a big deal. A lot of stuff going on, protests. I'd guess for and against the U.S. as we know it. I don't know. But I do have some stories here, and I also want to talk about the tingling that's in the air. I mean, it's like everyone is on needles and pins, waiting for action. And gosh, this is a time for restraint, a lot of restraint, because you have the stakes are so high that it is best to wait. And there's a story that I heard. I'm assuming it's true to some degree. It was portrayed in a movie about the Kennedy, the Bay of Pigs, not Bay of Pigs, well, Bay of Pigs, I mean, resulting of it when we had the standoff with the nuclear standoff with Russia. And in that drama, it was portrayed that there was a plane shot down. Somebody in the Russian facilities on Cuba shot down an American plane, and in this movie, the military people were, they wanted to fight Russia bad. In the movie, they portrayed it, and I'm assuming there were people who want to do that, as is today. And what happened was Kennedy, in the movie, Kennedy, actor or whatever, portrayed that he said, maybe it was a guy had an itchy finger on the trigger, maybe didn't really, kind of got jumpy and wanted, do we really want to start a war because of this? And he opted to kind of let it go, kind of like pretend it never happened in terms of the back channel dialogue they were having during this. And it ended up, there was some message that was given, and it was very bad, and then he ignored it, and the message was changed in the resending. The point of my story is that a nuclear world war was avoided, assuming the principle is true in this movie, because we had restraint. Yes, they shot the plane down. Yes, he could have fought back. Yes, he would have the right, I guess, if you want to call it that. But choosing to wait and say, you know what, I can always start World War II in 10 minutes if another plane gets knocked down or whatever. And I would think that, again, basing on this made-for-TV movie, and I'd have to read if there is any official documents, to confirm it. But let's just take it at face value. But anyway, it's a good Aesop's fable anyway, that stakes are so high that nobody should be having trigger fingers, literally or figuratively, because of the world. Everybody talks revolution, and I hear people say, "Bring it," and and the U.S. people have billions of ammunitions. They have a third of their tenth of what the world has. I mean, they go all these, and I'm not saying that's not true. I'm saying that if you have a battle between, let's say, the far left extremists and the centrist to right, if you want to use a left-right paradigm, it's becoming handy. But yeah, that would be true. Soros would have to bring in an awful lot of guns to be able to arm these folks to literally take on the people who have it. Now, people in a lot of the cities, Chicago, L.A., and all that, New York, well, you're going to be in no trouble because it's hard to have a gun then. But anyway, the point I'm getting at is that if the military is involved in this, which apparently it's not, apparently what Trump has done is decided to make friends with the military, or maybe he naturally wants to make friends with them, because throughout all of history, who the military backs is who is in power. I mean, the military essentially is who is in power. When the law fails, might prevails. So as it stands now, it looks like the military is not involved, at least not involved against the general populace. It may be invoked if there is an actual shooting area. It may be invoked against the radical elements, and then there'll be those who will be fighting on either sides. I'm sure are going to get busted and killed or killed. So my whole point here is to really kind of take a breath and chill. I've been reading a lot of the comments, and of course the left extremist side has gone insane. But a lot of quote our guys if I can use the term referring to people who are constitutionally minded as opposed to communistically bewildered, they're getting pretty cocky. I mean, Alex Jones is getting real, like, bring it, and all this stuff. And I'm like, we don't want to have a war here. We want to be able to prevent violence, and we want to be able to have that happen in a legal way, in a talking way, and save the violence for the political machinery of the United States to be used to stop violence. And we don't want to have violence on both sides. So, I mean, if someone attacks you, I'm fine. I mean, I just saw a video of the Proud Boys. Some guy attacked the Proud Boys who was an ex-vet and, knocked them out with one punch. And that's one of the things here is you have a lot of people on the centrist to right side. I don't know how else to say. I don't like using those terms, but gosh, I don't. Unless someone else can email me with a better way to put it. Those folks who are doing that are more prepared for a fight than the except for perhaps the MS-13 thuggery. But anyway, my whole point of bringing this up is that we really should tone down things. I have noticed in my own self, I like to have witty, sarcastic comments. I mean, I've always done that. I don't know. I don't make an apology and I don't make a brag. It's just the way it is. And what I have tried to do is to tone down the level of that. Because sometimes when you point out something that's so obvious to oneself, just to say it is like, waiting for comments to come back like, duh, the sun rises, it appears to rise in the sky every day. Really? I didn't notice. So some of the stuff is so obvious to me. But then I start thinking like, well, when you have the ability to see like picture a multifaceted diamond, and as you look at it, you can, you hold it up and look at it, you can only see, maybe I could do a quick example here. I wish I had something a little more planned. I was measuring here for the things I want to do. Let me use this. When you hold this up, if you've never seen this before, and that was your view, you wouldn't know what's on the other side of it, for example. And if you looked at it this way, you wouldn't know what's behind it, or you wouldn't really be sure on each side. You know what I'm saying? Everything is going to be based on your perception from where you're at. Now, you add to it what filters you may have on your own eyes, as well as prejudices, reading into things. I mean, you got a mess. So when you have all this stuff going on, you can only see so much, and one shouldn't be so quick to fill in around the edges. And it's a time to kind of just really listen and think about it before it happens. Now, again, so to me, it's like both sides are like okay having this. Well, I don't know if the word civil war is going to be apropos. I mean, in the Civil War, you had military organizations on both sides, the North and the South. Former Northern soldiers became Southern soldiers, and they fought. It was professional war. What we're talking about here is the general populace split on ideological lines, and then you have the police and military, on the outside of it. So it's, but to compare it to civil wars is, I think, disingenuous. But you do have this potential coming up here. And all my life, I mean, going back in the turbulent 60s, it was never this close. And it was the protesters versus the establishment. And now it's person versus person. And while in the Civil War, you did have, literally families fighting against each other on this. And this would happen again. Again, it was more of a professional thing. The professional aspects of this would be the Soros funding and whatnot. And that is going to be canned Soros bring in weaponry and do kinds of stuff to get past the United States. Now, when you have the FBI, CAA, and all those involved in it, well, yeah, the answer would be yes. Who knows? There's the new, what's that phrase, new sheriff in town. but there's a lot of people under him in those positions who are still against him. Now, let me. I kind of drifted off there. The main point, though, is to be careful what you wish for, because once you go forward past a point, it's going to be very hard to come back. It's going to be very hard to come back. And so the best time to decide. I had a friend of mine I knew since I was a kid, and he had a saying that he said, you can always ruin your life tomorrow. Of course, it's kind of a negative saying, but it's a good point. You don't have to rush to do it today. You can always do it tomorrow. So the lesson there being, take today to assess the situation so you don't ruin your life tomorrow. So that is what I'm saying at that point. I wanted to mention, too, segueing, I noticed there are people starting to subscribe on Spreaker, which is good to see. It's the audio only. I mean, I've done this. This was a radio show, if you want to use the term radio to refer to an audio broadcast or webcast, since its inception, having basically at its best prior to this having like a webcam with still shots a la Art Bell. And, in the last 2017, I started doing this YouTube aspect of it. But I want, this is really a radio show that has a visual component. Like right now I'm talking, all you people watching are just looking at me talk. So what I do have some things I will share with you, but I'm glad to see that. And if people want to, you can download the app. It's free. I mean, to listen is totally free. You can listen online. You can listen on an app, on a phone, a tablet, and all that. And so that's something. I even allow downloading, so you can download the stuff and listen to it later. You don't even have to be, download it and then not be online when you're in your car or driving or whatever. So I wanted to say hi to those folks. I got some news stories here I'm going to go to, but I did ask last week for people to write me and say why they listened. And I did get some comments. They were good. One in particular stood out because this guy goes back a long ways. He goes back to the days of New Bureau and doing all the Planet X stuff. And the other show that I used to do, I mean, I still do it once in a while, but right now the co-host's parents are ill and he's taking care of them, so it's not really happening. It's more of a comedy show. That's where we had fun, sarcasm, music, and all that. Black Knight Square G show, which is still around if you'd like to listen to old episodes. But he said he stopped listening to the show pretty much for the last year or so because of the politics. I totally get it. I didn't even pay attention to this election. I mean, I went for Ron Paul last year, and once Ron Paul didn't make it, it didn't matter to me. You're voting for Frick or Frack. And it wasn't until Trump won the nomination that I was like, what? He actually won the nomination? I got to check this out. And then I started hearing what was going on, and then I saw the reaction, the lying, the united lying, misrepresentation. Well, misrepresenting, is that actually a word? Misrepresenting. I'm making words up along the way of the legacy mainstream media. So I saw this stuff. I was like, whoa, So I'm going to say I'm going to plead. I was dragged into it. But what dragged me into it was seeing the lies and seeing the truth and seeing the plans that could work and seeing the political shenanigans and how people could say one thing a couple years later and say just the opposite and then attach things like racist and sexist and all this stuff on to Trump. It was amazing to see him go from pretty much everyone kind of liked him to being this, Hitler reincarnate. So that, of course, that drew me in to it. Not to mention the fact I happen to live in America where this stuff is happening. And so, I got to plead, duty calls, I guess, on that. I mean, I like talking about a lot of esoteric topics because I like to approach things without a bias, as much as one can. We all have biases. And in fact, knowing that and going into it, knowing that you have a bias somewhere and kind of keeping an eye open for it, that gets you a step up for actually trying to find truth and all that. So I did comment to him, and I said that was pretty fair comment, and I said a very truncated version of what I said, and he wrote back a list of stuff he'd like to talk about. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to post this stuff in the bottom underneath it. You can go right now to last week's show, scroll down the comments, you could see it. But I like a lot of the stuff he talked about. Effects of Chern, possible pole shift, volcanic and earthquakes, weather anomalies, all these stuff we've talked about. In fact, if you look in the archives of the show, you will find things with, not by fire, but by ice, interviews I've done with Felix, I can't think of his last name now, and many other topics along this way. I mean, this show was born out of the ashes of Art Bell's show. I mean, I'm not Art Bell, but I kind of liked his format, and I kind of went with the format. It'd be like a blues guitarist having his own style of blues, still within blues. And I liked it. But along the way, I found that, especially in this last year, that we're at a cornerstone in this world, really, and it takes people of critical thinking and seeking for truth. Even if they don't like it, or if they have to redefine where they're coming, it takes those kind of people to really help in the. And I don't have any kind of delusions of grandeur, like I'm some important sage for this. The world would go on without me, but I think each one of us, in whatever we're doing, wherever we go, we have a responsibility as a human being to add our viewpoint, our view of that diamond, our view of the facet into the mix, because as we do that, we help one another see clearer. I'll say something that'll bring clear up an error or a misunderstanding. I'll have a misunderstanding or an error corrected when you do this. This is the whole point of it. I cannot figure out reality on my own. I can do the best I can do, and if I really try hard, I can do, for me, I could do good enough to get me through life onto the next level. And by seeking God, His wisdom, and wisdom which is given out by grace because you ask for it, not because you earn it. I think I've done a lot in changing many of my paradigms, turning it around to where I'm at. So, I mean, it's not like I'm sitting here going, I was right all along and you people should get with the program. No, I'm telling you that I have been wrong many times in the past and have turned around. In fact, some of my kids who listen to the show on occasion have said, hey, okay, well, you've changed. You used to say this. I go, yeah, I did, and I see wisdom in this, and so on and so on. So this is what we need to do. And so I'd love to, priority of Scion, American Indian religious practices, New World Order, problem of religious violence, look at, all these things. And I look at that list, it's like, yeah, I told them, I said, hey, I tune in and listen to that show, so it's kind of like, I think we're coming to a point now on ahead where the best thing to do is not to add more fuel on the fire. There's plenty of fuel out there, and the fire is there. We don't need anybody throwing matches around, and we don't need that. And I think perhaps it's a good time to start mixing in some of these other things that I'd like to talk about. And apparently, Rain Dog here in this chat would like to as well. And so that's good. I appreciated him taking. He wrote out a pretty good comment. I mean, he took time. It wasn't like he just, hey, I love you, man. I hate you, man. And so I appreciate when someone comes up with a sober comment. Whatever it says, I'm interested. So kudos there. You see, I can try to show a little bit of it here. Yeah. So if you just go to, the show page. I'm not going to show it there. Well, you could see that comment. And I appreciate emails. I've had people send me texts and so forth, and so I do appreciate that. The one thing I did say to him, I said, well, give me a list of stuff, and I said I prefer, I've talked Planet X to death, and I think I'd prefer a lobotomy than to talk about the flat Earth. there's again my, humor, if you will. And so they came up with a pretty long list. And I've talked about some of these things, so that was good. I'm thinking, what should I go next? I guess I should just go. Let me see. Yeah, okay. I'm going to skip that. Comments are given. All right, let's go to what I have written down here, or listed down here. There's no less visible today. Les is out of town, and he's unable to record, and he stayed out longer than I guess he was planning on, which is fine. He's all apologetic, like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to do it and whatnot. And I appreciate. I just forgot I'm in the chat room now. I'm looking. Yeah, okay. And I forgot what I started to say. That's I don't know if it's lack of gray matter or what. But I had some things about Facebook I wanted to mention. I don't particularly like Facebook, so let's get that out of the way. People say I hate Facebook. I don't go there. Well, I don't like it either. I think it's the whole layout of it is bad, and then you have all the information and whatnot. I try to keep it to a minimum, but I use it because a lot of people do. And I do have a spot on minds.com and gab.ai along with Twitter, but those don't have the volume of action. But I do put stuff there too, and when that picks up, that'll be great. But I want to say that the way it kind of works here on Facebook for me, and those who are listening will use this, I guess, as a reference to my point of it, is that when you sign up on Facebook, I mean, when you befriend somebody, when you ask to be a friend or somebody asks you and you agree, what ends up happening is that whatever you post goes on their timeline, which they may choose to not make public or make public. I don't. I keep it on my side. And then I push out onto my public feed what I may from that feed, plus looking at Twitter and the other ones I mentioned, and I bring that into it. And I write my own comments, both posts and comments. So when you're a friend, you're going to see what I say, and I'm going to see what you say. Now, I have been asked, it's mostly because of my commentary on QAnon, kind of like, no one says you have to comment. And I understand that, But here's the thing. If you're going to be a friend on Facebook, I'm using a Facebook friend because, I don't know most of these people. One of the things is if you put a post up there, and if I choose, I'll comment to it. No, I'm respectful, but I'm going to point out pluses or minuses about it. It's going to happen. So if you don't want that, then don't befriend me, or you can put me to sleep or whatever that is. Silence. There's all these little snooze and all this other stuff. And it's not a threat. I'm not pissed or nothing. I'm just saying, like, I'm doing this stuff as part of what I'm doing with the show and whatnot, whereas I see stuff happening or whatever, and I put a comment in, and that information could be worth less or worth something or worth a lot. It's up to the people who are seeing it. And I did mention something. I don't know if I still have it here. I don't. I think my comment was that I have. I'm not forcing you to read my post, nor shall I be compelled to not comment. But I also wanted to mention about. Gosh, I don't have that other comment. I must have made it on someone else's comment. So anyway, that's that. I guess I'll leave it at there. And some people have commented how they like my post, and it's like it wasn't made for me for that reason. It was made to go like. I'd like to think that what I have to put out there is not just a rhetoric. It is a critical analysis based on evidence, logical thinking, and so forth, history. Now that is going to be skewed, I guess, through my lens, and I understand that, but Everyone else is the same. So that's why I gave that analogy earlier on. I put up a post just for funny matters, for those who are still alive anyway. And Rex Ungerite, who's a parodist, wrote, "You matter unless you multiply yourself by the speed of light squared, then your energy." But here's a point I wanted to really get to, because this was taken to a comment that I did, but I decided to pull it off separately, is that, people have been talking about Donald Trump, Donald Trump, he's this, he's that, he's whatever. I mean, even those who like him or don't like him a little are not blinded by political hate, they don't like him. And this is the thing that I try to get across, and I did it, I think, good, and I want to remember this approach. And I wrote down, I have faith in Donald Trump. It seems to me that the condition of the world and U.S. politics, he was literally organically grown with the means, traits, talents, and vision to overturn, or at least to confront, evil forces at work. He's not neat. He's not slick. He's not smooth. But tough enough with the biochemistry that actually feeds on what is thrown at him and poops it back at them. And this is where I think would really help to understand with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is an organically created. Some people have said sent by God. I think, and depending on how you want to look at that phrase, it could be. I mean, we're the ones that come up with this whitewashed saint thing. Those saints in the past got their hands dirty and still served the principles of God. But what I look at Donald Trump is from his actions, from his plans and his actions and how he acts. I don't like a lot of the tweets. I think that he purposely inflames people, but that's part of his chemistry that is fighting what's going on here. I mean, nobody, in my opinion, could have gotten to this point and done what he's done other than him. I mean, I don't think anybody could. In fact, trying to think of who could take over for him, good luck. It's going to be somebody else that's going to be organically grown that fits up in a thing. But I want you to think about this. I think he's an authentic American Daikaiju. Now, if you got to look up Daikaiju. Actually, kaiju is the root word, and Daikaiju means large. So, Daikaiju is a Japanese mythology, kaiju, and it means a strange beast. And give you an example of what a kaiju is, or a Daikaiju, is Godzilla. Now, Godzilla, according to, this is all mythical, all right, but there's a philosophy there that you can use, even though there's really not a Godzilla, is that in the mythology, nature, earth, whatever, in this place you could put God, whatever you want to do, will organically create. That's why I used the word organically. I wish I had a greater vocabulary. But, well, because the very conditions of the problems of the time actually are ingredients in creating a kaiju. The battle that comes from, so if you look at some Godzilla movies, you have Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, which is a terrible movie. I can't even believe I'm referencing it. But in concept, in typical, you have the Smog Monster arising from the pollution and the smog of the planet. That's a Daikaiju, only I guess would be called a negative one. It's a result of, look at it as like the swamp creature, okay? And look at Godzilla, Donald Trump as Godzilla versus the swamp creature. Actually, there's a movie, isn't there? It sounds like there actually is a movie like that. Godzilla versus swamp creature. Anyway, so this is where you have this diabolical group, swamp, that is running the governments around the world. And that's why I don't support any governments. All of them have swamp creatures lurking within them. All the psychopaths are being drawn to these positions of power, whether it be a church, whether it be a mosque, a government, a charity. It don't matter. You look at the Clinton charity and look at all these things coming out. Anytime you have power, psychopaths are drawn to it, and the more power there is, and the smarter they are, the higher they can go, and more diabolical it is. So when you're criticizing Donald Trump for not being the the stereotypically imagined, Jimmy Stewart standing up in the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. All that. That's fiction, right? Now we're talking about we're creating the individual who's going to go into the battle, but that individual who we create is not able. Ron Paul, there's a good example. Ron Paul, as president of the United States, he couldn't even get to be president, and I supported him tremendously. He couldn't do it because the swamp, the Daikaiju, the swamp creature, was able to use their swamp creature powers and prevent him from laugh him off the stage. The Republicans were involved in it. The Democrats called him a racist, which is ridiculous. So if you look at Donald Trump as a Daikaiju, as Godzilla, for say, Godzilla versus swamp monsters, if you've ever seen any of these Godzilla movies, and forget about the special effects, I mean, just this is a principle. In Japan, they don't care, they do puppets and stuff. It's the point that's coming across. If you look at it, you have this individual who has risen up in the system, having the traits and the abilities to fight the swamp creature. And that's who you want to fight the swamp creature. Not some guy that you, or gal, that you want to be made in your image. You want the person who has got the tools and the actual chemistry that naturally fits and fights against these swamp creatures. I mean, the swamp creatures can't be taken. The swamp creatures will destroy any of the standard politicians. The FBI and CIA, I'm sure they all have files on the people. And then when you see these guys retiring and the Republicans are all retiring, it's like, yeah, they got their files sent to them and it said, either you help us or at least just go away. And they're taking the latter option. I don't know this, okay? I don't have any information. I'm just running kind of a superficial analysis of it. But I do think that if you look at Donald Trump as a Daikaiju fighting the swamp creature, it's a little more understandable because no one could have got this far, and he still might not, But it depends if the force of nature, and that creative force of nature which created him to be a perfect person to fit and fight against. If true, if this is a divine or at least a divine mechanism in action, he can succeed. Now, to what degree and how far? I mean, historically speaking, you've had the bad king, and then the good king comes, or the neighbor comes and knocks out the bad king and brings peace for his 50 years life, and then he dies, and his son comes up and slays everybody again. So I look at Trump, Godzilla Trump, he would have to make such a overturn of the swamp so deeply and so wrong, so ultimately as to decimate and discourage this to happen for quite a long time. And I'm asking a lot. You're asking a lot, historically speaking, for this to happen. And to simply say, well, it's God's will and all that, I don't think it's God's will that, young ones get leukemia and die at 5 years old. Don't think that's God's will, okay? God allows stuff to happen because there's a mechanism that he's created here that has been screwed with that will self-correct, and over time, with the will of the creation of it, I think will make things amends. I think evil will ultimately fail in and of itself. It doesn't need to be beaten. It will fail in and of itself if it's not beaten along the way. It's just like if you add probiotics to your system, it does help your system, but they will die. There's a couple of generations in that die because it's not the natural way to exist. In the universe, I think when God created the universe, he said it was good. The mechanism of the universe itself is self-perpetuating, cleaning. I mean, just think what happens when there's a forest fire. It burns down a forest, and you go back to it in 20 years, it's all green. It's a self-perpetuating mechanism in creation, which is, to me, even more amazing than God sitting there micromanaging stuff, right? And so that's why I want to get that point across. If you look at Donald Trump as Godzilla, it fits better. It fits better in the thing. You know, you don't want to have Godzilla over for dinner per se, but you're happy that he just destroyed the swamp creature, and so I want to go from there. I think I have to retitle this into the song of the day. Instant Karma. I put that up there. Here's to me. This is such a. I can't even think of the word. It's so obvious. You know, the Captain Obvious. You'll see me post that every so often. It's obvious. There's only one reason why they don't have a voter ID. There's only one reason, and that's we don't want to expose vote fraud. That's the only reason. And because the leftist side of the system benefits and or perpetuates the voter fraud, what they say the right side does is to suppress voting. By making somebody re-register to vote, you're suppressing the vote. Well, if they really gave a damn about the situation, the country or the situation, they'd go out and make sure they voted. I mean, this last election, I would have taken the day off if I had to vote. You wouldn't have kept me away from the voting booth. So this is the thing is that when you, for those listening on the radio, ID required, alcohol, by alcohol, cigarettes, open a bank account, apply for food stamps, welfare, Medicare, Social Security, unemployment, rent, or buy a house, drive, rent, buy a car, get on an airplane, get married, purchase a gun, adopt a pet, rent a hotel room, apply for a hunting license, apply for a fishing license, buy a cell phone, visit a casino, pick up a prescription, hold a rally or a protest, blood donations, buy an M-rated video game, purchase nail polish at CVS, purchase certain cold medicines, enter state and federal buildings. You all need an ID. When you go to vote, no. I mean, isn't it ridiculous? So what I would do if I were able to simply write something down, which you can't, it's going to have to take legislation, is I would have everybody have to re-register. All the voting rolls are purged, and now you have to re-register. Now, maybe start it, I don't know if it's too late to do this now with the 18 election, but by 2020, there should be no problem. You totally re-register from the ground up, and I have no problem with a photo ID. You can give it away. There's something that tax money can go for that would help the people living here. All you have to do is a voter ID, and you could use it and put it away. It don't matter. You can use it once. I mean, I got a voter card when I go to vote. I don't think it's absolutely necessary for me to vote. I don't think so. I have to register. This shows I registered in case there's problems. But all you have to do is show an ID, and not a driving license ID, because you can get those and not be a citizen. When you're voting in a country, you don't care what country it is, you got to be a citizen. You got to be eligible to vote. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, no problems. I got no problem with that. I'm not going to try and vote in Spain's election. So this is so obvious that it's so frustratingly obvious that I don't even know what to say. It should be, how could you oppose that? And, of course, the only reason you can oppose it is because your guy will get weeded out some votes. Now, Justice Thomas, one of the Supreme Court justices, took an aim, and I think it's very good. Basically, to sum it all up, is Thomas wrote, he questions the ability of a federal judge in a district, in this case it was Hawaii, to be able to make a universal decree and stop something, stop the president from doing something, for example, in this case. And, because then he could just shop whatever judge you want to say whatever you want, and then he gets in and it gets done. And when it goes to the Supreme Court, it gets overturned. But meanwhile, you have all this stuff. So he thought there would be, and he thought that was, actually, they shouldn't do that. And I think personally, I mean, again, I'm not in charge, but if I could, and if I could just wave a wand, I would say the Supreme Court should be at the beck and call if there's a problem of a constitutional proportion, they're there. No season, no taking off. I mean, I understand some of them are aged and they can't get up at 2 in the morning and do this, but, the next morning they show up and they start working on it. So the Supreme Court's job is to apply the principles in the Constitution into the actions of law and people, entities and everything. So now there's a report, the White House denies that Trump's reportedly withdrawing troops from Germany. My guess is that's probably some kind of little tactic and negotiating tactic or whatever, with his art of the deal. But it does bring back my love for Ron Paul's platform, which was to bring everybody home. All the troops home. Close all the bases. With the military it is now, and the weapons that travel around the world in hyper seconds, close them all down, bring them back, install them in America, put them along the border. You won't need a wall. And the money they get paid would be spent in local American places, not in Germany. You wouldn't be renting facilities in Germany. You'd be renting them in America or owning them in America. You would save money just in logistics, let alone the actual throwing away of bombs and whatnot. So, I mean, that's why I was a Ron Paul guy. I stole this from Jack Posobiec, and I told him I would. Bank robbery is another word for it's an undocumented withdrawal. And how does that really shows the whole ridiculousness of undocumented immigrant. No, they're illegal aliens. And that's all. I don't care what color they are. I don't care what country they're from. It doesn't matter. There's a way to come in here, and all countries do this. Mexico does it. I don't want to even go into it. It's so ridiculous that I can't even go into it. Now I want to mention James. My name is James Arthur Jancic. Arthur being my grandfather's name. James being my father's middle name. My father was Melvin, and my mom thought that, the name Melvin would get, Jerry Lewis did a routine teasing people and so on at the time. And so anyway, I became James. Now, I had no say in that. However, there is one James in history that I am very happy to share the name with, and that's James the Apostle of Jesus. And this is not even church or Christianity talking here, but philosophy, life philosophy. And as I talked out in the beginning about the rhetoric and people getting hot and yelling and all this stuff, James has a nice, if you read the book of James, I would really recommend it. It's like, to me, he's the only apostle that actually got what Jesus was teaching. That's maybe heretical, but I think it's true. Everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. And a big amen is that. There's another quote here. I'm going to make it little because it's a little bit of a bigger thing. See how great a forest fire is set aflame by such a small fire, and the tongue is a fire. It is a very world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members as that which defiles the entire body and sets on fire the course of your life and is set in fire by hell. And I would say it's a long story, but I would say that hell is the Greek word Gehenna, which I didn't look this up, but I think I did in the past, which is more of a fiery destruction. So set on fire by destruction. So the point here is very wise at this time to be to think about this stuff. I've been putting out little sayings, I guess memes of my own, if you will, only perhaps not as sexy with the pictures and all. But I put down truth, reality, quotation, or parentheses, truth, and fiction, parentheses, lies, can only become clearer by inquiry. So, using that principle and applying it, when you seek to ask a question, whether it be about vaccines or the Holocaust, The truth and the fiction will only become more clear by inquiring. It doesn't mean you stop inquiry. It doesn't mean that you make something true by outlawing its opposition. So that's why I've never been in favor of any of that stuff, because as you investigate things, truth becomes. Now, you have the reason why that they want to make things illegal and all that, one of the aspects anyway, is because you have this new thing now. Well, I shouldn't say new thing. It's been around forever, but it's gaining a more of a presence, is this whole narrative building. You listen to them. They've taken control of the narrative. And that's the whole point. It's not about finding truth. It's who can spin the yarn that gets enough people to go along with it. And if it's true, fine. If it isn't, that's fine too. So that's why you could always ask why or where'd you get that from, and where's the reference point for that? Where is this from? Why do you say that? What's the evidence? That's all legitimate. That's all no problem. And if somebody is seeking truth, they're going to go like, yeah, no problem. Now, I'm not going to go into this whole thing. Laura Loomer asked about Q. And there's a movement now for people to ask the president about Q. My email didn't work. Would you write down the email in the chat room, and I will see about it. So I'm not going to go into that. It's all part of. I've said this before on the show about Q and whatnot. But Theobald said that Q is John Titor, Titor. So then I had to go look that up because I go, what? That sounds familiar, but I don't remember it. And it goes back to Art Bell in the late 90s. It's the time traveler, right? So lo and behold, I'm reading this stuff, and there's articles that came up. Donald Trump is John Titor, traveler from the future. And there's other ones that say bombshell lightning bolt pick proves that Donald Trump, and of course it doesn't prove it. It's just an assumption that his lightning bolt hit the Trump Tower, which is driving his machine, So, but I just thought, this is pretty interesting. A person watching says Q is John Titor. I look it up. I go, yeah, that's right. It's the time machine guy. And there's happened to be articles saying that John. So then, of course, we all know about the Barron Trump novels. His son is Barron Trump novels. It talks about being president. And it was written in the, was it 1890s? 1900? Let me see if I can open this up real quick. All these links will be included in the, what is the book? 19th Century Publications. The Last President is the book that was written by Barron Trump in the early 1900s. It's like, wow, And so then I started making a comment. And these comments will be available. You can look at them. And I made a comment like, well, what they're saying that what's going on with Q and the movies that are coming out, the plan and all this. I says it sounds like a page out of Baron von Munchausen. And that's a great movie. Not the remake. I didn't see the remake, but the original one. It was made. What a great movie. And then I'm thinking, I just said Baron. So I'm talking about. They talk about Q. Somebody mentions that it's John Titor, who has now claimed that John Titor is Trump. Barron Trump writes novels in the 1900s talking about the last president, and I say it's a storyline that fits into a Baron von Munchausen. So there you go. There's all the. Whatever that means, I don't know, but that's more my speed, I think, than dealing with that. Congresswoman's been arrested. Yeah, here's a video that I think is interesting. It's a video channel I just stumbled into called Headlines with a Voice. And so I got links to it. You guys can start looking at it. I just thought it was kind of interesting. And basically, it's just someone talking. It's actually kind of, I think, kind of a clever scenario, very, very bare-boned, but so far there are points that I've happened to look into I thought were pretty good. So I thought I'd put that. If those who want to search for it, You could just search in YouTube for headlines headlines with a voice. Or probably could search Google. I mean, they got a lot of views. So, no, I said something. A lot of people comment, or at least liked or commented or whatever. But I was watching the news the other day. You know, it was in the background, and they were talking about an Annapolis shooter. My ears pricked up when I heard them say the police had just been training for a live shooter last week. I'm going like, what? Every time we hear about one of these things, they just had live training, the shooting in Florida. They had the Secret Service training them on how to deal with a live shooter. The week before, in fact, they still thought it might have been part of the drill. So, I mean, I'm not trying to start some kind of a conspiracy theory here, but it's like, come on. Are they training that much everywhere so that anywhere you go, you're going to be within a couple of weeks of training? You know, or is this a little bit disproportionate here? I don't know. I've been quoting Laura Loomer a lot. I don't know a lot about her, but I'm watching a lot of her posts, and I find them quite interesting. She does a little confrontational with the people going up to Maxine Waters. And actually, Maxine Waters, I guess, pushed her out of the way, and she filed assault charges on her. So we'll see where that goes. And I got to chuckle and give her credit, so I don't know. I'm sure how people will post pro and con, and but still, you got to give her credit. She's going out and doing something. I mean, literally going out and doing something, and standing up and showing up and confronting Hillary and whatnot. I'm not a big confronter because it's like, I don't know, what does it do? You know, unless they happen to do something that you can be reacted upon. Like in this case, she was assaulted by her. But still, nonetheless. I also put a link to Gert Wilders, I should say. I'm not sure how to say that. Who spoke at the Tommy gathering. Very good speech. I don't know a lot about him. Only he's been Brexit and Tommy supporting and all that, which I am as well. And now they're talking about, all this fake news and whatnot. I came up with another little saying or whatever. Misinformation should not be prevented by the medium. It should be discerned by the reader. And it's all about grabbing that narrative again. They, and it goes all over the place, they think that you can be sweet-talked or bullied into going along with the position they want. And it works, frankly. A lot of people, it does work. So what it ends up doing is they don't want to have real information come out. They don't want to have competitions and people bringing up evidence and bringing up old YouTubes of them saying something different. They don't want that because it interferes with their narrative, which is simply do what I say or else. Here's a cookie or here's a stick. Carrot and stick, take your choice, but do what I say. So again, you should never censor. I could see coming up with, of course, I could see coming up with stuff for like X-rated stuff is splitting it up to a certain age. But then, you're teaching this multi-gender stuff to kids in young in school. So it's like that shouldn't be done either. It shouldn't be done. Teach people in school how to the 3 R's: read, write, and arithmetic. And how to do trades and how to chemistry and science, so that you can go out in the world and do something. Another interesting quote, and I've had I can't remember Richard Felix. I don't want to click on this and go through all of this stuff, but Robert Felix, that's what it is. Robert Felix. I've had Robert Felix on the show. He was back in Art Bell in the day. Ice Age Now, I guess this is his website. He changed his website name, iceagenow.info. And there's an article he's bringing out and commenting on how this is in the middle of summer, basically. Well, pretty close to, I don't know what the middle of summer actually is. Middle of July, I guess. Whatever it is, temperature-wise. And the Arctic Ocean is almost completely ice-covered, with up to 16 feet of ice in areas. Now, I remember specifically, and I've brought the post up, which I don't have handy at the moment, but somebody might comment and add it to it. But I've had it up here recently where brought back an old video from Al Gore saying that by, and I forgot what year it was, I want to say 2016, I want to say, or a year or so, that it would be so bad that you would have the entire Arctic ice cap would be gone. You know, I'm sure it'd be just for the season, and it would freeze a little bit for the winter, but that was for effect. He was going to say the entire ice cap was gone. Well, here we go. We got it almost completely ice covered in the middle of June, up to 16 feet in places. What's going to happen in wintertime? You know? So that's why this whole climate change is baloney. Now, there is climate change in the real physical world sense, but it's not driven by man, and it can't be taxed away, is what this, whole point is. Another issue here, I guess I got a few more here I got to get through, here's Liz, I can't think of her last name. Boy. You don't have to worry about me being too slick here. Liz Wheeler. Whenever I see a face, I can't say the name. You guys know that by now. I've said it a million times. The U.S. is named one of the most dangerous nations for women. It's in top 10. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I'll have the links for you can see a report that it's one of the top 10 worst places for women in the world. What? And the top nations are, like Yemen and whatever. All kinds of stuff like that. And number 10, the United States. Comment. Supreme Court upholds. Yeah, well, I guess this has been since the last show, but Supreme Court upholds Trump's travel ban. There was no doubt in my mind because it was done by the letter of the law. And this is where Clarence Thomas said, hey, wait a minute, these guys were doing it. Now, this whole red hen thing with Sarah Sanders being booted, I think, do I need to go into this? I mean, it's been kicked around so much that it's totally ridiculous. My whole comment on it would be that for years people fought about not being allowed service at a restaurant because of race. So my thing is, what does that mean? If Sarah Sanders was, well, she's a woman, so right there, if it was a black person who was a Trump supporter, if they got sent out, would people just believe that it wasn't being race and it was about politics? What if you have a black man or woman being kicked out of a Trump supporter place because they supported Hillary? That would be called racist. This is what this whole neo-Maoist, neo-Bolshevik, rules for radicals garbage is that's going on here. Is that there's people are saying, hey, that's not fair. Well, I know it's not fair. It's not intended to be fair. It's intended to be psychological warfare. It is a revolution in the non-physical sense yet. So, of course, it's not going to be fair. The whole goal is to get their job done. They don't care what it takes to get the job done. The least amount of effort and trouble, the better. But U.S. cuts rebels loose in southwest Syria. I love it. That's one of my things I wanted Trump to do, was to get out of Syria, and the so-called white hats and all that was all problematic. The rebels that were being supported were not. It was about having a war against in Syria, and eventually with Russia. That was about the whole deal. Let me see what this. Right. So that's good news here. It's kind of quiet news. And there's Loris Loomer. Well, this is all going around. I also got links about cannabinoids and how they were used. And it was very interesting to think that hemp was used in the food chains. Dairy cows ate feral hemp, which was rich in CBD oil, passed it to humans through their milk. Pigs, chickens, and other livestock are also fed hemp. Excuse me, and the CBDs were in their meat and eggs. In 1937, the government eradicated all forms of feral and cultivated hemp, thus eliminating CBD from the human diet, which has been a part with since prehistoric times. 80 years of human suffering, misery untold, millions, needless deaths, all caused by prohibitionists who supported outlawing hemp for one reason, and one reason only, because they were told to. Americans were duped by their government for the past 80 years. Well, one of the many dupes. And that's why it needs to be done. I'm going to pass on. There was an article in the anti-media, which, I have them included, and I don't agree with all their positions, but Netanyahu says the Bible proves Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Now, I've said this before. I don't want to harp on it. In my opinion, the current Israel has nothing to do with the Bible Israel. It's a human construct. It's a political construct. It actually started prior to World War II with Hitler allowing Jews who had money and so on, allowed them to leave Germany and go to Palestine and buy German products and then sell them there, and then they can recoup their money. So to me, there's no relationship whatsoever there. However, as a nation, they can decide whatever their capital, wherever it is. Yeah, but wait a minute, they took over part of land and all that. I'm not justifying it. There's been plenty of times I've been critical of Israel. I mean, when we're going out with skunk juice and just shooting it in people's houses in retaliation to something done somewhere else by other Palestinians, that's ridiculous. All right, so again, all nations are psychopathic. All right, so nobody escapes that. But if you're going to start saying, well, wait a minute, they took it away from Palestinians, well, I think the Native Americans are like, oh, hey, wait a minute, what about us? And other Native Americans can turn around and say, yeah, but, you Native Americans took my land. And then they all came over from Asia, allegedly. So there was nobody here at this point. So it didn't belong to anybody. Where the first person who stepped on it could claim the whole. I mean, you see how it gets into a point? It doesn't excuse it. It's like, here we are. And how come you make it work now is because you never can go back. You can't give reparations. It's just not happening. It's not, That's why you have the aspect of forgiving one another and doing what we can to move on. And I think I'm going to leave it there. And infrared therapy, I talked about that last week a little bit. Yeah, here we go. I'm getting to last week's show. I've been doing the infrared therapy on my feet. I have my feet are a little bit numb. I hate to use the word numb because it's like if you turned the volume down on a feeling, or if you say you had layers over the nerves, like skin, like if I had like thick calluses or something, which I don't. And I've been using this infrared therapy on it. My sister had mentioned this stuff, and all I got to say is I don't know if I'm getting more feeling back, but my feet feel nice. I mean, they're non-problematic. So I'm guessing it's healing. So I'll keep you up on that. If not that you necessarily care about my feet, but because it could be something that you might want to consider on parts of your body. It's the low infrared, not the far infrared, the near infrared, which is the kind you'd buy in any kind of store. And you go look at a heat lamp bulb, make sure it's the red kind, not the white kind. And then I've been putting it on for like about 5 minutes per side, however you want to do it. I only pretty much do top and bottom and a little bit on the side, but you can, if you want to, you can move it all around. You just don't want to burn the skin because infrared light, it's like shining a sun lamp on you, only it's just infrared, so you still have to be careful about it. So, somebody asked about my email, didn't work. And, if they could, it's James at feettothefireradio.com. I still have old emails that people may have that work. I don't think I've turned any of them off. James at innersights.com. But I also, let me mention this before I go. I'm going to be changing my server. A lot of reasons for it. But in this case, the purpose is I'm being labeled as spam. Now, I don't know that's purpose, if it's a consequence, because you got to have reverse DNS on your server, which I do have, but then all of a sudden it goes away, and then they have to put it back. And when you don't have reverse DNS, reverse DNA, did I say that? Reverse DNS on your server, then they don't think it's real. I think someone's doing it out of their house or something, and it's fighting spam. You got all these text lines you got to put in your domain records, which I've been doing. You know, I learned it all and I'm doing it. So one of the reasons I'm leaving is to start fresh with a new server, and the system I'm looking at allows me to assign the reverse DNS, and so that way it doesn't get changed by the company by accident or what have you. And so I will be doing that, and I will give you a heads up, because obviously when you switch things over, there is glitches, or also there are things when it won't work for a while. Like, hey, what happened? They finally got to him. They took him down, whatever. No, I'm just going to be working on that. I don't know when I'm going to get around to that, because it means fitting it into the million other things I'm doing. But I just want to give you a heads up on that. And that's one of the reasons why I have been sending out a newsletter. People have signed up for newsletter. Excuse me. And I sign it up, and half of it gets sent back to me as spam. So I just gave up on it for now until I get this thing set up. I mean, I could go buy a full service, full man system and all that. I just can't afford it. So I'm kind of have to do a hands-on thing myself. A little help from my brother on that. So let me take just a quick look if there's anything that just popped up. Maybe something happened I can comment on while I'm doing the live thing here. All right, we got Sandra saying, catch you later. Really like your shows. That's cool. Thank you. Talking about my feet. Feet to the fire. Yeah, my feet. Hey, that's what it is, huh? But anyway, that's it. I'm going to leave it at that. For those who are Q fans, all I got to say is, I'm not going to be harping on it. We'll see. I mean, if it all works out, I'll be happy as can be. I don't know if I'll be barred from the kingdom because I wasn't a believer, but you can understand. And as one guy made a comment, very nice comment to what I was saying, he understands where I'm coming from, because I've been through life, and I've been a believer on things, and I've trusted things against my eyes, against my critical judgment. And they've come back to be wrong and lies and stuff. I've had this stuff happen to me. So it's not that I'm gun-shy in as much as what has served me better moving forward was to have a critical analysis based in reality, not just believing. And you say, well, you believe in God, don't you? Well, I can't prove God exists to you. I could just tell you my story of it, why I think it is. And I have a lot of internal evidence that I can't bring externally. And that's fine. If people don't want to believe in God or don't believe, they don't like my theology, and that's fine. I'm not trying to make anybody believe my way or whatever. I'm only offering things as, again, information. But I'm not trying to bust the beliefs. I'm trying. My biggest fear in this, I don't want to say the word fear, concern, is that people have placed so much hope in this. This is a very terrible time. It's very upheaval and all this stuff. And all this whole line of thinking of having trust and trust the storm and trust the faith and all this stuff, using that tactic, which has been used by psychopaths from day one, right? Are you going to believe your eyes or what I tell you? You know that line? And then something goes wrong. And all these people, fall on their ears. Now, there's a lot of people out there with their big boys. They got big boy pants and big girl pants, and they can handle it, and that's fine. But that's why that's why I want to just say, that's why I'm saying this stuff. I would love it to be true. I mean, I would love Jesus to return tomorrow. Does that mean that when I don't think he will, I don't have faith? I think that there's a lot of stuff going on in the system that's been divined in its creation to do these things. And if Jesus does return, I've had a vision. You can go look up on YouTube. I had a vision of Jesus' return, and I would love it. I was crying when I was having the vision. I'm driving my truck, and tears in my eyes, and I'm seeing this stuff. I'm not going to go out and say, it's going to happen. I got a message from God, because, it's nothing I ever had before. I've never had anything like this before. Nothing has come close to this type of vision, whatever you want to call it. And I could hope on it, and I get up virtually every morning. I say, Lord, let today be the day, right? And I could explain the theology behind the intervention of God. I can explain why and how and all that. I can do all of that, but I'm not expecting somebody to believe it. You know, and that's why I think a lot of personal revelations are for the person. They're meant for the person because you can't transmit it. And if somebody believes you, what they've done is they've now brought into their reality a set of circumstances that hasn't been filtered through that the gut, the mind, the soul, the heart, you know, the normal things that God has created to have people bring it in. But, you know, I'm not going to beat a horse, and I sure hope it works out. And as long as it doesn't get, you know, I feel like I just happened to see an episode of Friends the other day. Now, I never watched Friends when it came out, and I have a problem with a lot of the free sex that's being in there. I think it's not wise, and I don't think it's way the body and the mind and soul is meant to be. Okay, so on that hand, I've just, especially by today's standards, it's pretty lame, right? I just push that away, and I like the dialogue and the sarcasm and the stupidity. I like things that are stupid and clever at the same time. Three Stooges, stupid and clever, right? But you know, Chandler is very, very sarcastic, and he can't help himself. And I just saw an episode the other day where he had a bet where he couldn't be sarcastic, and finally he just quit the bet. And a lot of times that's me, and I, you know, as I get older, I guess wiser or tireder, or what the thing is. This is why I've tried to, and especially now with the there's gasoline fumes in the air. I don't want to be striking a match. Anyway, so there we go. No Less Visible today. I mentioned he is out on the road, and he will be back. You know, next time. Let me see if there's. Oh, I guess when Rick D mentioned Q, like what's Q? I didn't know if that was sarcasm because I've seen it so much everywhere. I figured if you're on the internet, you know what Q is. But you know, you have to. If you want to go back to some shows I did, I wrote an article on it. I mean, there's some things you can get my opinion on it. Read things I've written, and there's just go in the internet, just in search engine and type in QAnon, and you'll be reading for the next year. So anyway, thanks for all for coming out and being involved in the live show. It's always cool to have the live people around. And for those listening, either on audio or video in the archive form, that's cool. That's why I put it up there. It's a world where not everybody could just sit down. Back in the day, we used to do television. You'd have to sit down and watch. My favorite movie of all time is The Ten Commandments. The only time I could watch it is when it was on TV, and we had to make shit down and do it now. It's a whole different world now. Everything is available whenever you want it, how you want it. So anyway, all right, we'll leave it at that. We'll see you next week. God bless. And as Kojak would say, like that there.
Thank you.